I was reading as a kid, you went to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. When you did that, was that back in BC when you had to go to like the tournament in Princeton and you had to play your way in?
Yes, that was we lost to Richmond, BC in overtime. It might have been double overtime to go as the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
so
right. They
we
wore you guys wore the Canuck uniforms back then.
so we went as the Abbotsford Minor Hockey Hawks, which was just fine.
Yeah.
Um, but as going as the Canucks would have been, you got the jerseys, you got the bags, all the new swag. But yeah, the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, that was a great memory. I have a great story about that. My dad took a team before I was even born there from Abbotsford.
With your like a sibling, or just was he just coach?
No, he was just coaching.
No way.
When he was younger, and then 25 years or 15 years later, I went, and then 25 years after I went, my son played in it twice with Vegas, Junior Golden Knights, went as the Junior Golden Knights, and was able to. We were able to see my billets that I hadn't seen in 25 years
No
that I
kidding.
stored with.
Were
My
they still
parents have kept
billeting?
in touch. No, they weren't, but they came to every one of his games, and he got to experience that.
That's wild. I took a team there. Gosh, that would have been in 2020, and like I heard a lot about the tournament, but it was that aspect of it, like the billets and the families, and just didn't anticipate like just how involved they were going to be in that whole experience.
It's a great place.
It's pretty cool. So I'm curious. Your dad, did he play?
He played back in the day. He played junior hockey.
Yeah.
Played a little bit for the old MSA Coppertones out in Abbotsford there. A little bit. My his younger brother played a little bit of minor pro out east in Rochester and different spots like that, Providence. But yeah, my dad, and then he started coaching me when I was younger and worked his way through.
So, I think one of the unique parts of your playing career is that you're captain in Brandon, and then you also wore the C for, I believe it was 5 different pro organizations, and obviously that just speaks to from a young age you had some leadership qualities. Is that cultivated through playing for your dad, or just is where do you, I guess, where do you acquire those skills, because that's not a given.
Well, I think they start at home for sure. My parents influenced me largely as you grow up and you see how hard they work for us to be able to play the game of hockey, be able to experience those kind of things. Two hardworking people. My dad was a lineman for BC Tel and Telus. My mom was a lab tech. And for my brother and I to be able to play hockey and travel and do those kind of things, they had to work. And I think so that leadership and accountability takes part. And then as you grow up, I think you grow into leadership roles. Whether it's your friend group or the teams that you're on, you become part of those groups that people look up to or look to follow,
Yeah.
and then it grows organically. And I think very fortunate to be captain of teams that I played on. I think 9 out of my 14 seasons as a pro was a captain, and that's something I took seriously. Whether it was my relationships with my teammates, with the coaching staff as a conduit or the go between those guys. I think I played with a lot of good leaders along the way, but you have to be yourself. It's the same as being a coach. You have to be yourself. People can see through you. Lead by example. Those are all important things. But I think the one that I took away is if you're not willing to do it yourself, you can't ask somebody else to do it.
That's sound advice. So when you're in Brandon, Kelly McCrimmon, I believe he was the owner at that point, but he's definitely the GM. And he's overseeing the hockey operations now with Vegas. And I think one thing that really stands out is that I remember growing up, Brandon just was always in the hunt. It seemed they always had a competitive team, and that's tough to do over the long haul in the National Hockey League. Vegas has been able to accomplish that. Is there anything that you can glean from just everybody wants to win a championship? But I think that there's, an equal part, or I guess challenge, of just staying in the hunt year after year.
Yeah, I think there's a big picture that obviously guys in Kelly's position look at as a general manager or an owner. In the case of Brandon, you're always planning ahead. That's what I've seen here. You're always looking beyond the year you're in. You're in that year. Your feet are where you are, and yet you have to look ahead as a guy in those positions. As a coach, you're focused on the now, today, what's going
Yeah.
on. Whereas a general manager, you're building a year, 2 years, projecting all these kind of things that go on. And Kelly's George McPhee have done a real good job here. Their whole staff, and then it's a matter of having the right people doing their jobs because there's so much to do in these organizations that
Yeah.
you try to hire good people and let them do their work. And I think that's whether it's the coach, all the way down through the trainers, the staff, the support staff. It's important that you allow those people to do their job. You show trust in them. You support them, but they have to be able to do their job. And then in each one of those chairs is the standard and accountability that comes with it.
So, we were just chatting in the sort of preamble here, and I mentioned I'd gone down and spent a couple days in Vegas, and had a chance to just, be around the youth hockey program specifically, but it's all kind of in one building with the practice facility there, and got to hang out in, I guess, the corporate side of the operation. But, my sense there is that everybody genuinely felt that their role somehow was a part or had an impact in ultimately what happened on the ice. Like, I really got the sense that everybody felt a part of this. And, I'd be curious, when you look at that big picture, what role do the Henderson Silver Knights play in sort of just the culture, and playing a role in ultimately what happens in the National Hockey League?
Well, there's probably twofold of it. We're over in Henderson, the southeast corner of Vegas. The Vegas Golden Knights are in Summerlin, the northeast or northwest, pardon me, corner of Vegas. So we're about 30 miles apart from each other, and yet we're connected. Uh, I think we have our own practice facility here in Henderson. It's a beautiful facility, similar to City National, where the Golden Knights practice and where the offices are. We practice out of there. We have our own game rink, Lee's Family Forum, which is in Henderson, probably a mini T-Mobile in
Yeah.
that sense. It's just about 6,000 people or a little bit more. They pump the music in there. It's a party the same way it is at T-Mobile. So there's the hockey side of it, and then there's the people that work for the organization that are involved in both teams, involved in minor hockey. I've been fortunate to have my son, who's now 17, be a part of the minor hockey here for the first 6 years we were here. Um, as I mentioned, he went to Quebec twice with his team. They've traveled around the '07 birth year, and hockey's grown here. It's taken off. The rinks are full. There isn't enough ice. There just keeps more rinks and sheets are built. And I give Bill Foley credit. He built two in Summerlin for practice rinks there. He built two here in Henderson. So there's just more and more rinks growing.
Yeah, that was, I think, I can't remember the exact stat that I learned when I was down there, but it was something to the effect of saying, like, the amount of rinks they need, or this was 2 years ago. So the amount of rinks they needed at that point is where they thought they might get to, like, in 10 years. Like, it just accelerated so fast. And I mean, obviously the success that the Golden Knights had early on, and continue to have, plays a huge role in that. When you look at, Henderson, I mean, one thing with Vegas is they've traded away a lot of draft picks. So it goes without saying that ultimately that maybe has an effect on, you may not have the influx of blue chippers coming through the American League team. But what are, outside of, just trying to get players to that next level, what are some of the underlying traits that you're trying to develop down there that are going to help those players align with the big club's culture?
Well, it's about being a pro. And I think our job is to try to get as many players ready to play for the Vegas Golden Knights as we can. Our other obligation in the American League and in Henderson is to get our players ready for an opportunity, if it may be with 31 other teams. Not everybody that comes through us is going to play for the Vegas Golden Knights. We
Yeah.
wish they could, and we wish he'd stay in the organization, but we still have to develop people, pros, continue to push, give our guys the best chance to reach whatever their ceiling may be in their careers. And a lot of times, because of uh, how we've drafted, or we've done a good job of finding free agents. We've done a good job, or the organization has done a good job of finding players that need an opportunity. And some of those guys have turned into and helped the Golden Knights win. And other guys have gone on to help other organizations. So that's something we try to pride ourselves on here. Yes, we may not have the first rounder, as you call them, the blue chip prospects. But we have a lot of good people in our organization that are prospects, or veterans, or guys that are trying to continue their career, and well, most importantly, reach their goals and team goals.
Is that, I guess, when you're having conversations with players, like, in your office, does that maybe change the dynamic, I guess, in terms of the conversations you may have had with like players at the NHL level, and just that it's, in terms of building trust, like you mentioned, it's not just about them playing for the big club. It's really just about helping them, setting them up for success in their career overall, and maximizing that. Does that sort of just change the, I guess, the tone of those conversations, letting players know that, hey, like at the end of the day, like, I just want you to win wherever that is, and I got your back.
Well, when you sit in the head coach chair, it's a different conversation than when you're in the
Sure.
assistant chair. That's for sure. So that's the first thing. The American Hockey League conversations are different than the NHL conversations. There's a lot of teaching, a lot of repetition that goes on down here, a lot of second, third opportunities that happen down here that at the NHL level don't necessarily happen because of the mandate to win now.
Yeah.
And are you ready and can you do it? The other thing that goes into here is we have to tell our guys, and it's every American Hockey League coach, be where your feet are. Yes, we're only 30 miles away, and you may live in Summerlin and commute here, but if your gear is hung here today and you're practicing with us or you're playing a game with us, we need you to be here. And it's uh, easier said than done sometimes. The physical part is your feet are here. Mentally, where are you? If
Yeah.
you've got just gotten sent down, you're not happy. Our job's to build you back up and or get you where you need to go. And I think that's the probably the conversations that we have the most here is how can you push through everybody that comes through our room, whether you're coming from junior or you've been a guy that's been up and down from the NHL, you want more. You want more, whether it's here, you want it more in your career to reach the National Hockey League. But nobody's journey is the same. So be where your feet are. Let's establish what you have to accomplish in that, and then we'll try to take the next steps.
I was thinking, when you were a captain in the American Hockey League, and I think we would assume that this, I guess, the speech or the goal setting is always like, hey, like we want to win a championship. But I mean, the dynamic there is so different in that, obviously. Um, players have their own goals as well, and I don't think you can fault them for that. There's a big opportunity, both in terms of just reaching a goal, but also just in the monetary aspect of it. How did you learn as a captain, or how did you frame that? Hey, we're all here, we're all trying to, we're all competing with each other for that next call up, but at the same time, we've got to find a way to pull the rope together and try and win a championship. And how might that experience lend itself to what you're doing today?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be on a real good Lake Erie Monsters team in 2016 that won the Calder Cup with Columbus's farm team, and there was a selflessness to that group, and I think that's where guys have to understand that it's not always the guy that is leading the team in scoring or the prospect that's leading the team in scoring that gets the call up to the National Hockey League. It can be what they need. It might be the penalty killer or the guy that's taking the big draws in the last minute, protecting a lead, who had nothing to do with the two power play goals you scored to get up to nothing, but now the NHL team is looking for somebody to fill those shoes or fill that role. How do you develop that? Well, we won, so you did your job. You're called up, and
Yeah.
the point scorer. Part of it is going up and being able to succeed when you get an opportunity there, and what role you're put in. And different organizations do that. There's some guys that get called up in organizations, and because you're a power player or a skill guy, you get to play in the top two lines. When you get called up, they'll make room for you on the power play, those type of things. And there's other teams where guys don't fit in the fourth line role. They don't understand checking role
Sure.
or of that nature, the value of it. And so there's part of learning that. I think the selflessness that goes into being a good team in the American League. I look back at the year we won. Zach Werenski signed an AHL PTO instead of going to play one game in Columbus at the end of the year and not being eligible for
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
our
To burn his
team.
ear, yeah.
Uh, he felt that we had a good team. Columbus convinced him that instead you're going to play NHL games, playing one game this year when you can play 1,000 at some point, which I'm sure he'll get to. Come join this group for a playoff run. We have all of our prospects there. Columbus didn't make the playoffs that year. We have a great group. All of our prospects are in Cleveland. Go get to know them. Go play with them. Go win with them. There was no guarantee that would happen, but he signed a PTO with us and joined our team, and that bumped first round picks that are around my age, Steve Eminger, Steve McCarthy, in and out of our lineup that are now coaching or working in the National Hockey League. Zach Werenski bumps them out of our lineup, and there's a selflessness that goes into it. They were ready to play. They played playoff games. They supported our team. Next thing you know, we're on a 2 month unbelievable run to the Calder Cup.
Well, how good was Zach Werenski as a teenager in the American League?
He won't play there again. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no
But
kidding, no
yeah, no.
kidding.
Zach came in and ran our power play. Just a real, genuine, good human being, a great teammate, a good person. And then there's the hockey part of it. He fit in seamlessly. But that was also, as I said, our team at that point was uh, we just wanted to be together as much as we could for hopefully another 2 months. And winning's contagious. Jared Bednar, Nolan Pratt, those guys, Toby Peterson, those guys did a great job of managing our group, and we had a hell of a run.
Well, another member of that group is Bill Zito,
Yeah.
who I think at the time, I don't want to say he was anonymous, but I don't think he would have been to the average fan. Certainly, wouldn't have been that well known. He was the assistant GM with the Blue Jackets, the GM of the Lake Erie Monsters. Obviously, now he's a two-time Stanley Cup champion, and I mean, I think what he's built in Florida and how he's turned that organization around is pretty remarkable. Um, what was his influence on that group and just maybe creating that sense of selflessness?
Well, he did. I think him and Jared Bednar and the staff worked together. He worked well with our leadership group, myself included, to get us what we need. We felt valued. The great part about the Columbus Cleveland setup was it was 2 hours apart. We had people from Columbus down watching our games all the time. Our prospects, the young guys, whether it was a guy like Josh Anderson, Kirby Reichel, Corpusalo, Forsberg, the goalies, uh, Zach Werenski, those kind of guys, Sonny Milano, they knew that there was somebody from Columbus watching them every night, and you weren't forgotten in the American League. And Bill did a good job of being around and uh, helping to evaluate and helping figure out what we needed. He would have been a part of convincing Zach Werenski to sign an ATO and come join that group in Cleveland. So he knew how to build a team. He knew how to find the right veterans. He knew the same thing he's done in Florida and had success with.
How much of I guess the success just like goes into just letting players know that they're seen, and maybe not always on the basis of, hey, like I'm being seen so I can get a call up or being evaluated, but just even in your role now, just to make sure that players don't go too long in a season without a conversation or acknowledgement that the work they're putting in matters.
Well, I think there's way more conversations that go on. The head coach, if the head coach talked to you back when I was starting to play, it was usually there's something real good or real bad. Now there's conversations that happen each and every day. You bump into players. You make a point to bump into players, get out of the room, have conversations. There's a lot more of I guess the managing and that part of the human side of it that comes into play now with knowing a player personally, knowing about their family, good morning, those kind of things that go a long way to having a conversation. A lot, you hear coaches say their doors are always open. Well, they are now. Players come in and there'll be different conversations. Some are about hockey, some aren't about hockey, and you have to be willing to have those conversations. There's guys that want to come in and know why they didn't get called up and another guy did. There's guys that want to come in and know why they're not getting those opportunities. So there's a lot of conversations that go in. You face them head on. You be as honest as you possibly can. You give them things to work on or push forward with, and then you try to build off that.
Was there any, when I mean, and we'll get into it, but I mean, you play for some great coaches. You've been around some, just I think really good humans in our game. But would there be anybody in particular in an experience that you had where you said, hey, like the way that person talked to me, and maybe in delivering some news I didn't want to hear, like that's how I'm going to communicate with players now that I'm in this seat.
Well, there's a lot of guys I played for that are coaching the National Hockey League now. I was fortunate. I started out with John Tortorella, Craig Ramsay, that staff after Tampa won the Cup. Moved through there. Rick Tocchet I had in Tampa as well. Then you move on to John Hines in Wilkes, Jared Bednar, Brad Larsen, John Madden. So I've played for guys that are continuing to coach in the National Hockey League to this day. But John Tortorella made a big influence on me. I thought his directness, his honesty, how he challenged, how he pushed. Um, there was a care factor there that sometimes doesn't get seen. He believes in the human being. He's one of the best people I've ever met in the game, and he's somebody that's pushed me to the point where I was able to achieve great things of playing in the National Hockey League. But through that, there was ups and downs. I blew my knee out. I remember he came and found me on the table in the intermission, which Torts doesn't do. He had gotten the news that I was, it was an ACL and I was probably done. And he made a point to come in and, basically give me a hug on the table and say, it's going to be okay. You're going to push through. This has happened. It's done is done. And let's get ourselves going. There's other times where he challenged. I've seen him challenge the best players on the Tampa Bay Lightning and come in and challenge them and push them, and then he gives them an opportunity to try to reach those challenges. And I think that's the one thing that I learned from Torts is he's going to push. He's going to push. Confrontation, as his saying is okay. He's good with that, but it's all for the betterment of the team and the individual.
Is that you mentioned that you challenge players, but you give them an opportunity to I guess prove themselves. Um, you know, Once you're in the thick of the season, things happen fast. You're often just you're reacting. But is that something that requires some intentionality? In that, hey, like I had that conversation with the player on Monday. We're in game three of a 3-game weekend, and I got to be mindful to give them that opportunity, so that they can bounce back, because otherwise, maybe that conversation, or you could just see how easily that erodes trust. And maybe it's not intentional on a coach's part, but is that something that you've got to be mindful of, I guess, as you navigate through the season?
Yeah, I think awareness is key. I think your words matter. When I have a conversation with a player, and I might have 5 conversations with 5 different players, that player
Exactly.
is only going to remember that conversation.
Totally. Yeah.
Uh, and you want to be direct. You want to be to the point. And then there's certain things that you may have to follow up on. Your assistants, you trust your assistants to follow up on. Um, but they're going to remember that part. So if I've challenged them now to be better on the walls, if I see them doing that, I have to reaffirm that. I have to reaffirm that to the point where you have to get to the point of they know that they did something right, and we're going to build off that. We're going to build off that. And in our league, if they don't do it right, they're going to probably get another opportunity. In the National Hockey League, you're not going to get another opportunity. Maybe it depends on how much what you have in the bank, to as some people say, of your status. But those details matter, and we have to continue to push for them. And those conversations that I have with them, I have to be mindful and aware that they are going to try. You hope to try to work on those things because if there's a relationship that we've built and a trust.
You mentioned your assistant coaches. You were assistant for, gosh, I think it was 7 years with Vegas on three different staffs or with three different head coaches. What did you learn from that experience that you maybe either pass on to your assistant coaches now, or perhaps when you're building your staff, you say, "Hey, these characteristics are really important to me."
Well, I was as fortunate as anybody has ever been to work with three great head coaches and three great staffs
Yeah,
coming out of retirement as a player. To be able to break in with Gerard Gallant, Mike Kelly, Ryan McGill was very very good to me. Those three guys as I got started, I was able to see the responsibility that Turk gives to his assistant coaches, the trust he has in them, allowing those guys to work. And then from there, Pete DeBoer, Steve Spott, along with Ryan McGill again, as we transitioned into that staff, the directness of Pete, what the responsibilities are, what the expectations are. Very, very good in delegating that way and then allowing to support you. And then, with Bruce Cassidy and then John Stevens coming in, and Misha Donskov joined our staff with Pete DeBoer and then stayed with that. So as that came in, it's you grow as an assistant. So, but I didn't know those guys. So it's you have to prove yourself. You have to be a good listener. You have to understand uh, when it's time to listen, when it's time to speak up, when it's time to uh, just grab hold of something and go get it done. I think you want to show and earn the trust of the staff, and I think that's important. So we've done that here in Henderson with Jamie Heward, Brent Kissio, Fred Brathwaite. That staff, they understand, they can coach. We have full autonomy, we have full trust in them. We obviously get along very well. We talk a lot about the game. We enjoy each other's company, but they have autonomy to go and coach and as they see fit because we've had these conversations before. It's nothing.
you mentioned Pete and Steve Spott and that group. So when I was coaching at UBC, we recruited a kid named Matt Pepe, and Matt had been the captain in Kitchener when Pete and Steve were there. And something he told me that has always stuck with me. Um, he talked about just the closeness of the team, and I said, well, what did the coaches do? And he goes, you know what, it's nothing they did. He goes, it was that you would go into their office and they'd have like the little like mini putt thing in the office, and he's like, the coaches would be having like a competition in the office, and he goes, we saw how much they enjoyed being at the rink and being around each other and how they competed with each other. And he said it was sort of like it was unsaid, but he's like that just like spilled down into our locker room, and it kind of gave us permission as players to really just form the bonds required to be a really good team. How important is that, I guess, that chemistry, and how can coaching staffs, um, is that just organic, or is that something that you pay attention to now as the head coach?
Oh, I think it's something that's very important. It's funny. Players see everything.
They do.
Players see everything. They understand. That's why it's so important. I know everybody says it, but when coaches disagree, we disagree a lot in the coaches' room. There's good conversations. There's debates. All those things that come forward, and yet when you leave the coaches' room, the message has to be as one. And I think that's where the good staffs deliver those messages. Everybody has a voice when you talk about a team, well, the coaching staff is a team within itself. And I've been fortunate. The three staffs that I've worked on, and now the fourth as a head coach here in Henderson, we enjoy our time at the rink. We always did when I was with Gerard, Pete, or Bruce. And those staffs also got along, whether it was dinners on the road, get togethers. There was a continuity of the staff and a team that I think the players see. They can tell whether it's how practices run, how meetings run. You see the coaching staff going out to watch hockey games at night or have a beer.
Yeah.
Those are important because we ask the players to do the same thing. We ask them to, you know, spend time together to grow the team building part of the uh, aspect of coming together as a team. And we ask them to do that. There's things that we join in with them as staffs to do. whether it's team building or things of that nature. There's other things that are just the players. So I think it's really, really important. And we put so much into this as coaches that I've seen. There's guys that have been in this business for 30, 40 years. And if you don't enjoy the people you work with and coming to the rink every day, it would be really tough. The winning and losing, the ups and downs, the things that go into that are hard enough, never mind the people you work with.
For sure. What is and obviously just due to the schedule, I would imagine it's different in terms of just the workflow as a coaching staff. But how do you sort of, let's take your league for example, where I imagine predominantly it's a weekend league. What does like Monday to the puck dropping on Friday look like from a workflow perspective beyond, beyond practice?
Well, everybody has their areas. Brent Kissio is power play and the forwards. Jamie Heward is defense and the penalty kill. Freddie Brathwaite is the goaltenders. And then we have a video coach, Summit Singh. So everybody has their areas. Depending on what our week looks like, we'll usually review the weekend on Monday or Tuesday if we're not playing again until Friday. We build out probably 2 or 3 days of practice, knowing what we want to hit on so we can work our way through. We get ahead of that stuff. We don't show video each and every day. There could be a team video on Tuesday, and then guys are breaking off and grabbing either lines or deep pairs or
Yeah.
individuals for some video. And then as we build through our week, it's making sure we cover the bases of what we want. It's a different league than you're right than the National Hockey League where it's every other day,
Yeah.
and practice time is at a premium at the National Hockey League because you're playing every other day. Here, if you played on the road on Saturday night, you're traveling home. If you're flying on Sunday on commercial or you're busing home, you're getting home. Sunday's a day off, depending on your schedule. You take Monday off, or maybe you're taking one off later in the week. Um, and then you're kind of building through, whether there's a day where we're going out to work on individual skills, we're going out and then leading into practice. Is there a battle compete day? And then how we have to look ahead, as we talked about planning ahead, to we got to be ready for Friday, Saturday again with a
Yeah.
back to back, whether that's on the road or not. So there's a workflow. Our staff meeting on the start of the week, whether that's Monday or Tuesday, I lay it out of how we see where we need to get to, and then we'll talk about it and work our way through that.
I'm fascinated by what those, so you lay out the plan, say, hey, we're playing, whoever we're playing next weekend.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to putting those practices together, and I'm assuming it's generally you got 3 practices to prepare. Is there a template that you might work within? Whereas you said, we're always going to have a battle of compete there. One day is going to be special teams, and then how do you get, I guess, gather everybody's opinion and say, okay, here's where we're going to drop the drills into, and then put it all together because it's I guess it's infinite the amount of stuff you could do, in a 60-minute practice.
Yeah, and it is, and we're going off sometimes the weekend before.
Yeah,
Plus, we're also looking ahead to the team that's coming in. Let's say that our tracking and rush defense wasn't good. Well, we want to hit this. We're probably going to spend 2 days on some tracking or rush at some point. There might be the part of the workday early that we're going to do that, and then we're going to lead into some 5-on-5 or return to D zone tracking and rush defense as we build through the week. Because whether it wasn't any good last weekend or it's going to be real important coming into the next weekend, we'll hit on different areas. Usually, it's attached to video
yeah,
in some way. But like I said, we don't show video each and every day. So we're building our practices as we come through. There's always the 2 or 3 shooter drills that you have at the start to get yourself going, and then are we going to work on 2-on-1s? Do we not finish well enough on 2-on-1s? Are we getting too wide? Or are we whether we
yeah,
what things of that nature that we want to build in? And then there's usually a 5-on-5 aspect that comes into it, especially as we get closer to game day into the week. And I think that's the one thing that we've seen or I've learned in this league as a coach is 5-on-5, when you get to later in the week, can be, you can slow it down a little bit more. You can do some more teaching, different scenarios you can set up where you don't necessarily get to do that at the NHL level, just because you got one practice, you got your 30 to 40 minutes, and then it's on to the next day, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday game days.
Yeah. What would be a drill like if you get up in front of the group and you're like, "Hey, we're doing this drill now." Like what gets your group fired up?
Competition. Our guys love competition, and I think it's at any level.
Yeah.
Whether it was coaching or helping out with my son's team to coaching the National Hockey League players, players love competition. It the practice goes to another level when you add some sort of competition or compete aspect to the drill, and you can't do it all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be physical. It can be, we play a small area neutral zone 2-on-1 game where there's no physicality, but it's looking to score before the other team scores, or coming back to get a new puck and somebody's defending you. But it's not the one-on-one battle in the corner or anything like that. It's a competition of trying to better somebody else, or better your teammates. And I think that's the one thing that players are driven by, competitive by nature. Coaches are competitive by nature. Winning and losing is part of what we live and die for.
You mentioned you get to help out with your son's team. And I've always sensed that there's a lot of value in working or spending time at a level where maybe it's more about the fundamentals, and that can maybe provide you a lens that helps you out at the higher levels. What have you taken away from that experience that maybe you may not have gained had you not spent time at in youth hockey?
Well, I did that still when I was a player. I used to go out with my son's team on the ice, and now and then as he came through here and I became a coach, you take. It's funny, you run some of the same drills you're doing with when he was a U10.
Yeah.
You're running the same drills as you run with the NHL guys the morning, when you had practice, and now you're at night running the same drills with the U10s. And it's a simplicity to it. It's not a very complicated game when it comes to some of that stuff. You can obviously build and adapt drills for the skill set of players, but there's certain drills that you can run that now you have to have more patience. The execution isn't as good. The whistle has to be slower, or the timing of it, or the the explanation of it. But it's funny. The one thing that surprised me, I think, not surprised me, but as I got into coaching, every coach has their sheet of paper with their 20 drills,
Yeah.
15 drills, or 12 drills that they love. And then there's the adaptations that come into that. As a player, you're just used to, you go out and the coach has a practice and you just run the practice. You don't necessarily know that it's only 12 drills
Yeah.
and 15 drills, and you like the pace of it. You like that it keeps going through. You know the drills. You get better at the drills. Your execution improves as the year goes on, and but it's only 15 drills,
Yeah.
or there's certain drills that the coach likes, and the players start to like them. And you see that whether you're at the U10 level, and it builds confidence, is what it does. It allows your
I
practice to
think it's a
move.
great
It
point.
builds confidence. You can continue to build and adapt off those drills. But now the players, you see the confidence. You're yelling out, we're doing the 6 shooter, and they're already in line, and the pucks can't get the pucks quick enough to where you're doing the drill, and you're building off that.
That's interesting, and I would imagine too that we all the game's obviously gotten a lot faster, and I think I look at it in football, for example, where just gaining an understanding of how they design plays, that there was probably an era where it was like the playbook was super complex and you had to players had to spend just hours every week trying to understand the game plan, and that there's maybe been a bit of a shift where it's like simplicity equals speed. And I think what you're saying is that the same thing for I think particularly for youth coaches, because we worry about this at the coaches site, because you can come on our website and you can get a whole bunch of ideas, which is great. But the lesson there shouldn't be like, hey, every week or every practice you've got to come up with an entirely new game plan, and you're just the players spend more time learning the drills than they actually learn what is inside the drills, or how they can get better individually as a team.
Yeah, we want to be as efficient as we can with our time. We don't practice. Very rarely do we go longer than 60 minutes. Now, most minor hockey coaches get 60 minutes as
Yeah,
well. So it's how do you utilize that? We don't want to waste anybody's time. We want to move. I think you can build your conditioning aspect in by not going to the board. Bruce Cassidy doesn't go to the board on
really.
the ice for the most part. I don't myself either. Now we pre-ice our team
Yeah,
at our meeting 45 minutes or an hour before practice. We'll go over the drills, and then it's a matter of as they're getting a drink of water, the pucks are getting to where they go, and we're yelling out. Whoever's running that drill, whether it's myself or an assistant coach, is saying, "All right, we're running this drill. A couple reminders. All right, get to your spots. Let's get going." And we're gonna a little bit of chaos is okay as well. The game isn't structured, but we're getting ourselves going. So our daily routine here is if we practice at 11, we'll have a 10 o'clock meeting where there may be some video, and then there's a pre-ice for what practice is going to be. So we'll go through practice, go through the names of the drills, draw them out if they're new. As our guys learn them, that pre-ice becomes shorter and shorter. And now they go do their warm-up workout, and we're on the ice at 11, and we're jumping right in at 11 o'clock to this drill, this or this drill. I can get, you can get 4 drills done in 20 minutes.
one of my earliest coaching memories. I was 20 and I was coaching Quesnel in the BCHL. Our head coach was Dale Marquette. I was probably way too far ahead on my skis in terms of being at that level, but I was, and I can remember the first week of the season. It's always fun to shoot on goalies, and I was, just in that you talk about, the players get the water, and I was taking some shots, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey Willie," and Dale Marquette's at the other end, and he winds up and takes a slap shot at me that just grazes me. And he's like, "Don't ever shoot on the goalies again. Like, get the pucks in the corner. Like, you're out here to do a job." And that's always stuck with me. But I imagine like what you're describing, like the organization from the coaching staff. It must almost feel like, or it should almost feel like you're putting together like a Broadway play, just in terms of saying, "Hey, like, it's not just about drawing the drills up. It's about how we're all working together to keep things moving at a pace, and maybe creating a sense of urgency amongst the players that they have to keep up as well and be on their toes to make practice run."
Yeah, when we go over it before we present to the team for our pre-ice, we talk about where the pucks have to go, where they need to go. Are they in the net? Are they in opposite corners? All 4 blues, all 4 dots, wherever they may be. And realistically, whoever's running the drill is waiting for those guys to get their drink of water, and they're kind of coming to them, and you're pointing them. The other coaches on the ice, you don't need to hear myself or the assistant coach talk about what drill we're doing. We know which one's coming. Let's get the pucks organized. Let's get them to where they need to go. Let's get to our spots so that the players are ready to go when it's time to go. And you can get a lot accomplished in 60 minutes.
How much can you divide and conquer, in that sort of framework, like just in the terms of the communication? And I guess what I mean by that is that, once the drill's set up and the players get in, where perhaps one of your assistant coaches has the whistle, and they're controlling the drill, but that maybe for you it's an opportunity to say, just jump into the line, have a quick 30-second conversation. Maybe it doesn't have to be a point you make in video one-on-one with a player, but maybe it's like, "Hey, here's what we were talking about last week. Like, really focus on these details." Like, you talk about being efficient. Does that lend itself to just being efficient in terms of maybe providing some nudges to players?
I think so. If I'm not passing a puck on a drill that somebody else is running, I can go stand in the corner or grab pucks or bump into a guy and tap him on the shin pad and say, "Great job the other night sticking up for a teammate. Great job the other night on the penalty kill." Or, "Hey, I sat you down because you took that penalty. I thought you had to take. We got to be careful with what we do after the whistle in a scrum. I understand you're trying to stick up for somebody, but time, score, all those things that come into factors. So you can have little conversations in that, and then they're off and they're on their drill, and they'll circle back to those. It goes back to the conversation we had: awareness of bumping into guys, having those conversations about them. It could just be a little tidbit like that.
It would appear that the Golden Knights, that part of their identity is, they're a big team, they're a heavy team. You get into the playoffs, they're really strong on the forecheck. So I go look up your roster, and there seems to be a similar type of makeup on paper, at least. It's one thing to say, hey, like we're going to go put a roster together with bigger players, or more physical type players, but how does that show up, and maybe how do you leverage that from a technical or strategic perspective to say, hey, like, hey, we've got this type of a roster, and maybe other teams, maybe they lean a lot more towards, say, speed and skill, and they try and win a different way. But how do you leverage that to say, here's strategically how we're going to play, to make it a little harder on our opponents?
There's two folds to that. The organization believes in that, so they're finding those players, whether it's drafting, signing, bringing in those guys that have the size or the length or all those words that we can use to describe how they take up space on the ice. And then there's the American Hockey League part, which is we play the similar system to Bruce Cassidy and the Vegas Golden Knights because I believe, having lived it as a player and seeing it with guys coming up as a coach, it's important that those guys understand those systems. We have a couple tweaks that we have, but for the overall most part, our forecheck, our neutral zone, our D zone, all those things are the same. Now, special teams can be a little bit different, but when guys get called up, they aren't always playing on special teams. Their 5-on-5 play is where they're going to get their opportunity and an opportunity to show or to stick at the National Hockey League. So I believe that we play off of that, those systems. I think most American Hockey League teams do now
Yeah,
because it's about you have to have players come up from
it's
your American
logical.
League to be successful. And those are the players of the future. And if they can get ahead of learning the systems and we can implement it, I can help teach it. I believe in it. I was fortunate to be on the staff that won in 23 the Stanley Cup. We play those systems. Now I'm teaching those to those last 2 years and on here to our prospects. And our hope is when they go up, it's seamless and they're not overthinking those. They understand how it works.
Does it change? I mean, you mentioned just like, say the length. So I mean, you could use examples, say on the forecheck or in the defensive zone, that if you have, um, your forwards, for example, on the forecheck, if they've got a long reach with their stick, that maybe dictates that, hey, we can maybe our routes can be a little bit different, or our timing can be a little bit different because we can get in there quicker, maybe even defensively, where it's like maybe we don't have to be so aggressive outside the dots because we know we've got, you know, um, we're better equipped to knock down pucks or to get in the corner. Does that sort of play into it? And maybe just as you're working with players to say, hey, let's take advantage of the leverage that you might have on the ice, and work on certain skills.
Time and space. That's the most precious thing. When you have it, it's great. When you don't have it, it's hard to play. It's hard to play without time and space, and that's what I think. Whether you're a forward or a defenseman, you're trying to. If you don't have the puck, you're trying to check and defend to get it back by taking away time and space. Everything from stick positioning to angles to playing through hands. That stuff's important.
Yeah.
That's how you get the puck back. And then on the flip side of it is working to play inside, working to support the puck, getting inside the coverage layers. I think that's where getting, being big, strong. Can you work through traffic? Can you play through a lack of space or a lack of time? Those are things that all these guys are continuing to work on, whether you're at the National Hockey League level or the American League or any level for that. Is there's always teams hope there's somebody between you and the goal, and you have to work your way through that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what series it was a couple of years ago. It might have been the year you guys won the cup, but Bruce had come out in the media, and there was maybe some banter with another coach, but he just said, like, yeah, like this, I'm going to just tell you exactly how we're going to play, and we're going to play that way tonight, and we're going to play that way the next game. We're going to play that way the next game too. Like, there's no secrets here, and it might have been in some of the gamesmanship of who's dressing that night or whatever. But I think that there's, I just remember hearing that. I thought, like, man, that must instill a ton of confidence in your players to say, hey, like, we're so confident in what we're doing out here. Like, we don't really care who knows. Um, one thing I'd be curious about, like, I didn't realize that you went directly from playing right behind the bench, in that inaugural season with the Golden Knights. How did that, like, as you were getting on in the kind of the back nine of your playing career, at what point did coaching become an option, and then how did that translate into an immediate opportunity in the National Hockey League?
Well, I always knew I wanted to stay in the game. I've been fortunate. My wife JD and our family, we've been together through everything, whether it's bouncing around the minor leagues or in different cities, playing in the National Hockey League, and we're in a good spot where I could stay in the game or wanted to stay in the game. And my coaching journey probably started. It's funny, in 2010 when I left the Tampa organization, went to Pittsburgh's organization to play for John Hines.
Yeah,
I started to keep a journal of kind of drills I liked, scenarios, quotes. It goes back to every day after training camp went down and wrote the practice plan. It was as simple as that to start with. As I started to build it out, and I continued that all the way through until I retired in 2017. So I knew I was coaching was what I wanted to do. It was close to playing as you could be. You're in the fight every day. I was fortunate, like I said, my family was supportive of it, and for me, it started to build back there. And then now we're talking 7 years later, when I retired from playing, you start to go through the process of, okay, well, what's this going to look like? You talk to people that you've played for, played with, played against, your contacts around the National Hockey League. The one thing I was asked a few times was, are you really done? When I decided to retire. They said, if we're going to go down this path or pursue, having a conversation with you, are you sure if some other team doesn't call you and offers you one more year to play wherever that you're not? And at that point, we had won in 2016. I played one more year, honored my contract, and then it was time. It was time. My body was telling me it was time. It was the time for the next chapter. And it's a matter of opportunity and very fortunate for how things worked out. But you start to talk to teams. And at that point, staffs were starting to grow a little bit more, I think, at the National Hockey League in the sense of how people were building their staffs, or general managers or head coaches were building their staffs. They were looking for some younger guys, a go between, somebody who has maybe played, somebody who had maybe been a captain or a leader in when they played, to fill a role of a little bit of that player coach, not to a
sure.
certain extent, that you're kind of just fresh out of the game, you understand the player's perspective, and yet you're a coach. And I think fortunate to have some real good conversations with a lot of people, and including with Gerard Gallant, and landed on that. And Turk hired myself to be part of the staff with him, Mike Kelly, and Ryan McGill, and it ended up being an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, and my family was comfortable with. And especially starting with an expansion franchise, something that you got to experience building from the bottom up, was something that very fortunate to be a part of.
In that inaugural year, and like, we don't have to revisit it, but obviously it started out with a just catastrophic tragedy. And that, there's seen the documentary that obviously, it brought that group together in some respects, but at least on the ice, like, at what point in that season as a staff does maybe the conversation change where it's like, like, we might not be a regular expansion team, like we might actually be like legit.
Well, you joke about it as a little bit as we were winning games, and
Yeah.
you're trying to not burst the bubble, and you continue to win, and we just continue to dig in, and you can see our players buying in, and the continuity growing, and their confidence growing in what we're coaching, and how the results are coming. It was about December. I still remember we went, I believe, on a back to back to, it was either Nashville, Dallas, or Dallas, Nashville.
Yeah.
And we won both. And it might have even been the father's inaugural father's trip. And you could see the team coming together. We had gone in two tough buildings against two good teams and won. And you kind of went, okay, there might be something here. You look at you look at the standings, we're in a good spot. You look at the eye test of how our team's playing, how we're built, and you go, okay, they're we're enough into here at 35, 40 games that maybe there is something that's there. Nothing's guaranteed,
Yeah.
but let's try to grab this and keep it going.
Did did it force you as a staff? I don't know, but I mean, I can't imagine, at when you were preparing for that season, that anybody in the coaching room said, "Hey, like, just in case we go to the Stanley Cup Finals, we should prepare for this, or we should introduce this into our game." But did it force you at all to say, "Hey, we better start," again, nothing's guaranteed, but we better start planning and looking ahead, that, this season could go on longer, or that, I just look at it from just a rest and recovery standpoint, that, hey, how we just manage our team, we better start preparing them that this season could be extended.
No, I'd say you always hope when you go into a season that you're going to play long, and yet you understand that there's 72, 82 games, whatever it is that you have to. Only half the teams usually come out of that and get to play longer. So it's a war of attrition to get to that point. So you're managing that point first, and you're on to the next game, and the next game is the most important game. And then as you build your season and you go through, obviously as you clinch a playoff spot and you start to, you can, you're worried about your first series or of that nature. But I think we were in the moment. That's the one thing that I've seen with teams. You're living in the moment. You're not looking too far ahead. As we talked about general managers and they're planning ahead and things of that nature. The coach is where his feet are. We talked about players being where their feet are. We're worried about, did we get better today? Did we cover the things we had to cover? Okay, if we did, all right, we're on to the next day, whether it's game day practice, recovery day, whatever it may be. But we're looking not much farther ahead until our next game.
In your time in, and I think that's, by the way, I think that's like such good advice, because I think so, players and coaches, I think players are oftentimes, they're always trying to play chess and look ahead at, like, where they're going to be the next season, the season after that. I think, oftentimes it's easy for coaches to do that as well. They're always looking at the next opportunity versus, as you said, where their feet are. um but during your time in Vegas, I believe the team only missed the playoffs once, and the other, every other season, you were in the mix, and you were really competitive. But then in 2023, you punch through, you win a Stanley Cup, and the margins are so thin at that level. Is there anything that you would point to and say, hey, like, this is something that was maybe unique about that group, or here's a break that we got, or anything that you would say that, this was the thing that maybe allowed us to go all the way?
Well, it's timing. There's a lot of things. We had good teams here every year, and whether it's some years you deal with injuries, some years you deal with different personnel, different scenarios, all those things that go into it. In 23, everything came together. We our regular season, we faced. We went through the season. There was spurts of the season where we were great. There were spurts of the season where we weren't very good. But you stay the course. You keep continue to push. You believe in it. That's the one thing. Bruce Cassidy, John Stevens came in. It was pushing straight ahead, forging ahead, continuing to believe that we had a good team and a good group, and continue to push the guys, knowing what the ultimate end goal was. And then as you get into and qualify for the round of 16 and you push through, it's how do we push our group? We believe in our game. Now it's the little adjustments that you can make, the nuances of a playoff series, a best of seven series. How do you push through that? How do we get to our guys where we need to go? And there's a lot of factors that came into play. Whether it was health or timing of different things or contributions from different guys, we had that throughout our lineup, and ultimately led to winning the Stanley Cup.
I'd like to jump to some of you. You mentioned John Tortorella, who you played for. You've coached with some great coaches. One of the people whose name has come up on this show a lot. I've never met him. but just would appear to be somebody who's universally um, really respected, and that's Craig Ramsay. And just seems to be that person that has when you look at a lot of like really high level coaches, then you go back and you look at their staffs, you're like, oh, there was Craig Ramsay. Oh, like there was Craig Ramsay on that staff. Anything that you take from him, from being around him in Tampa?
I'll talk about him. Then I do have a funny coaching tidbit that
Okay.
Rammer gave me when I played for him. But Craig Ramsey was a huge part of John Tortorella and that stuff. He was, I guess, the yin to his yang. He was the guy that Rammer understood. Torts could come in and tear the strip off somebody, and here comes Rammer walking in after to, more so or not, put his arm around him, have a conversation, talk him off the ledge, say, get him going. And I think Rammer really just did his job. That was the one thing you noticed about him. Zero ego. Maybe a lot of times was the smartest hockey man in the room, and yet didn't have to put his chest out or puff his chest out and say it. He just wanted what was best for the team and coach. And he's gone on to obviously coach with great people, be a great head coach himself. I believe he's with the Slovakian
Yes.
national program as their head coach still. He's a hockey lifer. From if you research his playing days to his coaching, he's done it all, and just a great man, first and foremost, but somebody that I think as player you could always go and talk to. He always was willing to lend you an ear. He was always willing to hear you out. And then he may disagree with you, or he may agree with you, but either way, he was a person that listened. And sometimes it's just a matter of a player getting something off their chest
Sure.
and
Yeah.
understanding that somebody listened to them. And Rammer for me was one of the first guys that I saw that ever did that, and did a great job of it. He also told me never to skate backwards as a forward, which is probably very good advice. I remember being on the penalty kill, and it was at that time where I guess the 2-2 box or guys were starting to back up, and he said, "I don't need forwards backing up," or tracking was coming in, and he said, "If you end up turning and trying to skate backwards, let them catch up and then turn and skate forwards because I don't ever want to see you skate backwards."
That is so funny. You know what? I think Scotty Bowman. There's like a clip of him saying the same thing, and which seems like if you why well penalty kill especially, which seems like that everybody has to skate backwards. But that's awesome.
And it
Uh,
was probably good advice because I'm not comfortable skating backwards, anyways. So,
there you go. Going back to your time in Lake Erie, Jared Bednar, and his, I recall when he was hired because he took over from Patrick Waugh, and just the nature of that in Colorado, like um, he kind of came out of nowhere to get that opportunity. And I think that there was sort of this. I remember at the time people were like there might have been some more experienced coaches available, but they go pluck this coach from the American Hockey League. Outside of having a great head of hair, what else would stand out about him, or maybe say that you would have observed to say, hey, this guy's going to be, he's just getting started. He's going to be successful at the next level.
well, Jared Bednar has worked at his craft for a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously, had a playing career where he played in the ECHL and different leagues, and then was a head guy in the American League, a head guy in the ECHL, an assistant in the American League. And my first time we crossed paths with Jared Bednar was Brad Larsen was a first year head coach in Springfield, and I was with just signed with Columbus.
Oh
I'd played
yeah.
with Brad, so it was Brad Larsen. Had just been named head coach. Nolan Pratt was his assistant, who I played with in Tampa, and they hired Jared Bednar, who had been let go, I believe, in Peoria, if not the year before, as a head coach. And Jared came in as an assistant, and then eventually took over when Brad moved on to Columbus as an assistant coach with the NHL team. But I just remember the humility Jared showed in stepping back and being an assistant. He loved the game. He loved to coach. He loved to make players better, help players, and it's continued. He's a personable guy, a great person, a great personality, and you can see how smart he is with the game. But and that led to when we moved from Springfield, Massachusetts, to Lake Erie or Cleveland. It culminated with him being the head coach of our winning team of the Calder Cup. And the next summer, we were at a golf event in the middle of August of all, and he got a call saying, I know he had been talking to Columbus or Colorado, pardon me, but he got a call on the golf course that
Really?
said
You were there?
you'd like to accept the job. I think he hit one more tee shot, went way left or right, and he said, "I got to go. I got to get off the course." And couldn't have been happier for him
Yeah.
and the opportunity and what he's done with our.
Yeah, I guess that means you got to pick up the first round in the clubhouse too when something like that happens.
I don't think he was still in the clubhouse when
No, that was
when
gone,
we
eh?
got finished. He was long gone. He had work to do, people to talk to try to get everything organized. Because you can imagine, I don't know when the last head coaching hire was in the National Hockey League this year. Roughly the start of
Sure.
July, maybe at the very
Yeah.
latest. Well, he's 3 weeks till camp, and
Unreal.
because of how things went down in Colorado there, and went in and has been there ever since.
Right. I've got one more for you, but you just said a name that I just wanted to highlight. So we do our conference at the University of Michigan, and so this year, um, one of my partners, Ben Cooper, had said, "Hey, like, what about getting Brad Larsen to come participate?" I didn't know him, didn't know a lot about him, and so he was set to this presentation, and I started learning about just his background and some of the experiences he had gone through as a player coach with his family, etc. And so we had texted and had a few phone calls leading up to it. And I said, hey, like instead of doing a president, why don't you come on? We'll do what we're doing right now. We'll do a live
Yeah.
podcast. I just think that there's a uniqueness. And so he leaves Columbus at like 4 a.m. He's an early riser and he comes in.
He's an early bird. Yep.
Yeah. And we just had it was this really cool, like it would be one of the all time cool experiences I've had since we've been doing this is just, met him. We chatted for, I don't know, maybe an hour. And then we jumped on a stage together and did this. And I was just like, man, like what a special and remarkable dude and human. Like what a neat guy.
Yeah, I was fortunate to play with Lars a little bit my first year
Oh yeah.
in Hershey. He was
God.
up and down from Colorado, so I had met him, stayed in touch, played against him again in the American League as he finished up in Portland. And then he got right into coaching too when he retired. And then his first head coaching job was in Springfield, and I joined Columbus that year and was his captain. So the same way, John Hines' first year coaching professional, Brad Larsen's first year coaching professional as a head coach were both I was their captains. But back to Lars, unbelievable human being, real good coach, real good person, great family man. Obviously, some news with had to step away there dealing with his family, and we obviously wish him and his family all the best. But just a real, genuine human being, a real good coach. He's somebody that's worked at his craft, has honed his craft. Another guy that I look up to, the guys that I played for, in the sense of the path that he's had, the time he spent working at it.
Totally. So last one, Ryan. I know that in the next 5 or so days that NHL and American League staffs across 32 locations are going to get together. Some are going fishing, some are just doing it in the coaching office, but they're going to talk about camp and getting ready for the season and getting alignment and all that. I've never been in one of those meetings. What I could imagine happens is that there's somebody's maybe on the whiteboard and they're saying, here's all the things we have to work on or prepare for. And that list is probably really long once you get, how granular coaches can get. But then maybe somebody in the room puts their hand up and says, hey, we only have like 4 days of practice and then we start playing. We can't, so that it would appear to me that part of the art of that is to say, hey, we got to figure out what we're going to say no to, or that we're going to touch on later in the year, and what's the stuff that we got to touch on immediately to get us off to a good start. And no expectations that you're going to lay out the blueprint here, but maybe just in the time that you've been doing this, how have you kind of made those decisions? Or is there maybe some things that you would say, hey, like these parts of our game, we can maybe tackle those a little bit later. Whereas maybe there's some others where it's like, hey, you're best served getting to those right away.
Well, everyone has their attention to detail. What happens is the staffs get together. The NHL coaching staff most likely has their video all set, and as an American Hockey League staff, will observe as they go through the meeting. So, breakouts, D zone, into the neutral zone, into the offensive zone, into special teams is really how it's broken down. And there's your 4 days. If you wanted to get through camp in 4 days, you could probably do that with video. You try not to have long meetings. You want to hit on the points you have. Your group depends on it. How many returning guys you have? How much are you changing? Are you if you are changing a certain forecheck or a neutral zone or something, maybe you want to hit on that first. But personally, I like to work from our own end and work out into the offensive zone. I think that's the most important. Can you check? Can you defend? Can you manage the puck? Those are usually fairly important to winning hockey games. And then basically those guys do a dry run, and us as an American League staff are there to observe, to ask any questions, but they're prepared. Coaches, nobody goes into this meeting and just you're looking at each other and saying, "What are we
It's
doing?"
not a think tank.
There's video that's ready. The head coach would have, you know, I know I do. Bruce does. You have the first 3 or 4 days of training camp mapped out, the drills you want to hit. You're going to tweak them a little bit depending on groups, numbers, where your team's at, how practice went the day before. But you have a template that you want to work with, and the one thing, just going off the most recent, is Bruce Cassidy is the 3 years they've got off to great starts, and he has a template for how he wants to do things, and our job as an American League staff then is to take that information. We'll bring it to our camp, and we'll represent it, reteach it, keep going with it as we go through it. But it's very organized. There's not. We talk about efficiency in practice. It's the same in the coach's office. It's the same in the meeting rooms. It's to the point. You get your work done, and then obviously there's conversations that happen afterwards. But for the most part, there's a plan in place that just has to be implemented.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ryan, this has been great. Always great to have a BC boy on the pod. Thanks so much for taking time, and wishing you and your crew best of luck this season.
Yeah, and you too. All the best with the coaches site and what you're doing. I know there's a lot of good stuff on there, and it's good for everybody, whether you're at the National Hockey League level or the youth level. It's important stuff.